Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
They're going home. They're going home. Yeah, they're going home. Can you imagine? Denny, it's been a short afternoon.
Oh, it's terrible. They're acting like a very frustrated hockey club, and I think they're displaying poor sportsmanship.
Can you believe it, Dennis?
I certainly can't believe it. I thought they'd have a little more pride and to play the game.
In 72, in Moscow, we stayed, and we took it all. And in 74, and now the Philadelphia Flyers room around a little bit, and they're going home. Thank you, Kukla.
Wow. So good. Bob Cole leaving us at the age of 90 today. That was January 11th, 1976, the Flyers and Red Army. Bob in the broadcast booth with Dick Irvin, and I believe, even though he was, early in his career, I believe it was Dennis Potvin who was with him.
Was in there too.
Doing part of some of the color analysis along with Dick Irvin. But that was one of the craziest games. I was going to say National Hockey League history. It was a National Hockey League team against a Soviet team. And the Flyers decided to be the Flyers that day. And Ed Van Imp and they were going after Valery Karlamov and other members of the Red Army team. And the Red Army had a lot of success against NHL teams during that tour, exhibition tour, up to that point.
Yeah.
They decided, midway through the game, we've had enough. They decided to leave. And then I believe it was Alan Eagleson, the infamous Alan Eagleson, an agent, lawyer, who reminded the Red Army people that if they did leave, they weren't going to get paid.
They weren't going to get
their
money.
So onto the ice, they went back onto the ice after that.
What a great call by Bob.
Going to miss Bob Cole. Farhan Lalji from TSN joining us now. Farhan, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
Good. Just, tough to hear that news, right? I mean, like many of us, I had a chance to interact with Bob on a number of occasions at various, NHL playoff games. And for me, I mean, I remember the 1976 call that you're talking about, the 2002 call at the Olympics when Joe Sakic scored and Canada, broke the gold medal drought was a pretty good one as well. But just whenever you had a chance to talk to Bob, like that was Bob, the Bob that you saw on television. And that voice that you heard and that zest for calling games was when you talked to him, that's kind of what it was like, right? He was that guy. He didn't turn it on for the cameras. So a person that I enjoyed getting to interact with for sure. And you knew whenever you were near him that, you were around greatness and just a legend in our industry. So I got to know his daughter really well at the '06 Olympics. We visited quite a bit. So certainly a tough day for her and their family. And, and the fact that he was able to do it at such a great level for so long, right? I mean, he did this well into his 80s and was a pleasure to listen to, even in his last few calls.
Well said. We'll take the tough turn here, Farhan. Canucks in Nashville on Friday, tied at 1. And I believe you tweeted about this, but what do you read into Elias Pettersson's body language these days?
Well, I just read into the fact that he is frustrated, right? And, you'd have to be. And part of the challenge for any athlete is to stay in the moment and not get, too high or too low. And if you're struggling, you can't carry that with you. And if you're on a roll, you shouldn't carry that with you. And, you want to stay in that moment, and he's not been able to. And, people can look at the obvious moments, right? You can look at him falling to his knees when you missed a shot with the open net with a second left in the first period, or when you slam your stick after you make a play that leads to the third goal. But like 8 minutes into this game, there was a play on the wall in the Nashville end. Quinn Hughes misses him with a pass. Now, should Pettersson have moved his feet to get to the pass? Should Quinn Hughes have made a better pass? Whatever. But like that was just a subtle play 8 minutes into a 1-0 game, and he dropped his shoulders and went back to the bench, right? And it showed right there that you're carrying things from previous games into this, right? And he knows now. So I'm curious to see if there is a moment for Pettersson where he just stands up and says, enough is enough. F this. I'm going to fix this, and I'm going to carry this team, and I'm going to do my part, and all of that. Like I don't know if he's wired that way. Like I think he's competitive, and I think he wants to do really well. But there are certain players that do and don't meet the challenge. Do you know what I mean? Like you can carry a role when you're playing really well, but are there some guys that can just battle through adversity and say enough of this. I'm not sure that he's wired that way, right? I'm not saying he's not a great player, but there's a kind of a different mentality required. And I said in my hit yesterday that I think if you're Rick Tocchet, you are limited in how you can challenge Elias Pettersson because you can't really challenge him. Like you can go to JT Miller and get into his face and put him on the bench and do those kinds of things. You can't coach Elias Pettersson that way. So that's why you get Rick Tocchet saying things like, oh, he's young, he's learning, this is a good thing for him. Rick Tocchet doesn't believe that, but that's how he's got to play this player.
Hey, Farhan, he's not the only one. If the Canucks are going to win this series, there are others that are stuck at 0 goals, like Miller, Besser, Garland, Höglander. They can't go this entire series with top 6 guys being so quiet.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, all 5 of the guys we've been talking about are 20 goal scorers. They've got 5, and none of them have a goal yet in this series. And I think people focus on Pettersson because there's very little in the way of generating at 5-on-5, right? I mean, you at least look at the JT Miller line and Connor Garland playing in the Joshua Lindholm line, and you see guys that are getting matchups, and you see guys that are carrying play, and really winning in terms of shot share, and they're driving play, and they're close, right? They're noticeable, whereas Pettersson's not noticeable. But at the end of the day, bottom line is bottom line, right? And you're right, Rick. All 5 of those guys need to produce, right? And in many of their cases, they don't have a point yet. I mean, Miller's got the empty net assist in Game 1, but these guys have all been quiet from a bottom line standpoint. So while Pettersson stands out and he's sitting there at -4, all of them need to take a step forward tonight in Nashville. Tomorrow night.
All right, tonight is the NFL draft. I think we all know who's going to go first overall, but the Seahawks got the 16th pick. But for me, it's always and I want to talk about the Canadians going in the draft because Canada is producing good football players. A lot of good kids go in the NFL draft. We got 2 offensive linemen with UBC, Giovanni Manu and Theo Benedette. Can you tell us if these 2 are going to go in the NFL draft or not?
Yeah, I would be stunned if Gio Manu was not drafted, right? There's been so much buzz around this guy. And, a lot of those scouts, the 16 scouts that went to the NFL Pro Day, they knew who Theo Benedette was because he kind of had this resume last year, right? I mean, I think if he would have come out last year, he probably would have been in the exact same spot, whereas Manu really took a step forward this year. And at 6'8", 350, just such an enticing, package and just clay that you can mold. So the way that he's been elevating, his agent Zeke Sandu's done a pretty good job of promoting him, and he's made all these NFL top 30 visits. He could go as high as the 4th round, Rick. I mean, more likely maybe he's in that 5-6 range, but if he doesn't get drafted, I'd be stunned. And I think in the case of Theo Benedette, I think there's a chance, like a reasonable chance he gets drafted, but even if he doesn't, he's going to be a high priority undrafted free agent that's going to get a signing bonus and is going to have a feeding frenzy after him the second the draft ends, so he can kind of pick his spots. And if you're a Canadian lineman, I can think of Alaric Jackson from Iowa, who was not drafted, undrafted free agent, and by the end of his first year, he was a starter, right? So that's not an indictment. You could put yourself in the right spot and get an opportunity. So I think both of these players are going to be in the NFL for a while.
Seahawks pick 16th. What are their priorities, Farhan? Would they be tempted to take Michael Penix? I know there's another player out of Washington they might be tempted to take, but would they be tempted to take left-handed quarterback Michael Penix out of Washington?
Yeah, I think they'll be tempted, but I think they have bigger needs. And look, I've always said Geno Smith is Casey DeSmith, right? Like, you can win with him, you're just not going to win because of him. And, and they got Sam Howell that they brought in from Washington, and, he was a kind of a high-ish draft pick in the 2nd round, and maybe they believe they can get some more out of that, find a way to get kind of a mid-level quarterback and build the team around him. So I would be surprised if they took Penix at 16, and I certainly think Penix is a first-round, top half of the first-round type of quarterback. I think, to be honest, in my opinion, I think he should be a top 3 quarterback. I don't think we should be talking about him at 5 or 6. But and he's certainly trending up. But Troy Fautanu, the offensive lineman from the University of Washington, is projected in most mocks to be the most likely selection. He's got a ton of versatility as an offensive lineman. Played tackle at Washington, could play guard at the next level. Very athletic for a big man. So for me, I think they're going to address offensive line or interior defensive line, given what their needs are. And their needs are many. But, I don't know that quarterback is what they're going to need, right? And they're spending some money on Smith now. I think you want to let that play out, continue to build your roster. Maybe a year from now, And I know this year's quarterback class is way stronger than next year's, but maybe you put yourself in a position. It's like when I look at the teams at the top of the draft, who's thinking quarterback, I would pity the quarterback that gets selected by the New England Patriots, because what an awful roster. And you're going to go in there and be in such a unfavorable position to succeed. Whereas if you go to Chicago, they're kind of built. They're ready for a quarterback to be injected in there. Minnesota, ready for a quarterback to be injected in there. There's a few teams that you can make that case for. New England, not one of them. But, if you're the Seahawks, continue to build around your roster. And maybe in a year from now, the time is right to take that guy.
Okay, you said New England, and a lot of the mock drafts have them taking Drake May out of North Carolina, a quarterback. But what would that mean? They take a quarterback that high for Nathan Rourke.
Well, I think Nathan expected them to take a quarterback that high, and he expected them to bring in a veteran guy, which they did in Jacoby Brissett. So he's in a tough spot, because I think the indications from New England are that whoever they take at high in the draft, if they go that way, and there's still talk they might trade down, that they will want that guy to sit on the bench, right? And so behind Jacoby Brissett. So would they be committed enough to make that guy their number 3 and give Nathan Rourke an opportunity to beat out Bailey Zappi for number 2, which I think he could beat out Zappi and would get that opportunity, right? So if that happens, again, how committed are you? Because you don't want to just say, okay, well, Drake May is now our number 2. And, if there's an injury, he goes in, because he still isn't going to be ready. I don't get the Drake May fuss. I get the Caleb Williams fuss. I get the Jaden Daniels fuss. Drake May, who's got the physical package, he's got the arm, he's got the legs. There are so many flaws in his film in terms of accuracy, his inability against man coverage. I think this guy's going to get a coach fired. And, you put him in that New England situation with that roster, all shades of bad. They're going to be picking number 1 overall next year.
All right.
Wow.
And also, Farhan, before I let you go, safe travels. You're off to the CFL draft to cover that, to host that, if I'm not mistaken, for TSN next week. So thanks for this, and again, safe travels.
All right, and then Nashville for Game 6. Looking forward to that. That'll be fun.
Oh, wow.
Safe travels again.
There's going to be a Game 6. There's going to be a Game 6. We know that, Rick.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe with Demko in goal, according to Rick.
Yeah.
Farhan, thanks for this.
Wow. See you guys.